Hey, bitch, hey, it's your girl Gloria, and we're here. We have a very special guest today. We are going to inform you, we're going to educate you, and hopefully maybe inspire you a little bit. We have Cassie here. She recently went through a surrogacy, so she's going to tell us all about that. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay. Hi, my name's Cassie. Well, like Gloria said, I just went through a surrogacy journey. I had boy-girl twins in May. So I'm hoping to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about it, hopefully clear up some answers that you guys have, and then afterwards, I mean, if you guys have questions, you're more than welcome to message me, pretty much.
So you are a mom other than just the surrogacy, right?
Yes. So actually, in order to become a surrogate, you do actually have to go through one full pregnancy of your own, be able to carry full term with no complications. And then you also have to be a mother or at least have one of those children living with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it is a requirement.
Wow, see, and I didn't know that. So you were telling me that there's two different types of surrogacy. Can you clear that up first?
So there's the most common kind, which is just gestational. So what that basically means is that you would be carrying an embryo that's not genetically related to you. So either the embryo is like a donor's embryo. So what happens a lot of times is like couples can do embryo creation. Let's say they've already created their family through IVF or surrogacy or whatever, and they have extra embryos left over. They do have the option to put them up for adoption. So couples who don't have eggs or embryos, they have an option to adopt them instead of going through finding an egg donor or creating their own embryos. Or it's also going to be genetically intended moms and intended dads.
Oh, okay.
So the surrogacy that I did, it was actually traditional surrogacy. The couple that I was working with, mom actually didn't have any eggs, so technically they are biologically my children.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How was the, I guess, like the getting to that point? Like, how did you decide this is what you were going to do? Was it something that was always on your mind, or was it something that just popped up and you're like, okay, I'll try it?
So before having my own kids, I actually didn't want kids.
Okay.
I wanted to adopt. But then I had my son, and his pregnancy was like the easiest. I didn't find out I was pregnant with him until I was like, ooh, I want to say it was like 4 months. Like I went to my first sonogram, and it wasn't like this little bean. It was like
full-on baby.
Full-on baby. Like
that's crazy.
So yeah, I was like 4 months in with him. And then after I had him, before I had my daughter, I was like, okay, well, I was at a point in my life where I wasn't like in a serious relationship. Like I really had nothing going on at that time. And I was like, maybe this is something that I would want to do. Like the day that I went to the hospital with my son, I was at work with like 6-inch chills. Like when I tell you my pregnancies were the easiest, there was no morning sickness, no back pain, no nothing. I didn't feel like a pregnant person. And then I kind of put it off for a while, and then got into a relationship, ended up pregnant with my daughter, and same thing, like with her, I think I found out at about 2 months, but it's because I think I already had some of the symptoms, like with my son,
Yeah,
where
you
I
knew
was
what
like,
pregnancy was.
I was like, okay, no, I'm not bloated because I'm waiting to get my period.
Yeah.
Like I'm bloated because I'm probably pregnant. And yeah, I was like 2 months in, I found out I was pregnant with her, and then same thing, like easiest pregnancy in the world. I have a lot of coworkers that I used to work with and friends that did struggle with infertility. Still have some friends who have been trying to conceive for years and they haven't been able to. And for me, it was like, dang, like my son was a birth control baby. Like I was on birth control with him and he still happened. Same thing with my daughter. And I was like, okay, like maybe I can do this for somebody else.
Yeah, like obviously, maybe not a gift. I would say you have a gift for easy pregnancies, but obviously, like you have something and you're able to share it. That's awesome.
So then I kind of started like researching into it even more than I had before. Like I started joining Facebook groups, actually talking to agencies, things like that. At this point, I was already with my daughter's dad.
Mm-hmm.
We were together, so I know when before we started this, you were like, okay, like, did you have to ask your partner and things like that? I did have actually a lot of girls message me like when I was going through the process. They're like, how did he let you do that? Because I've asked my boyfriend and they just won't let me. So one of the things is if you are in a relationship, you need to make sure that they are going to be supportive of you,
And
especially
that
if
should
you're
be
married.
anytime.
No,
Anytime
yeah,
you get
with
a man,
anything.
he should be helping you out,
Yep.
supporting you, letting you do what you need to do to help the world. Okay?
Yes.
That's all the time. Mostly, like, especially in this situation, but all the time, get yourself a supportive man, okay?
Yep.
That's it.
But yeah,
Sorry.
no, I'm
Go
like,
on.
yes, exactly. But yeah, a lot of girls are like, he'd never let me do it. He'd never let me do it. And I guess kind of like backtracking a little bit, if he's not letting you do it, it really should be a conversation with between you two. Like, okay, what is making him like be against it? I guess in a way.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a misconception that the baby is like yours. I mean, in my case, it was, but the most common type, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like, it's not genetically related to at all. So, what's his problem with it? You know? And if you don't know how to answer like his concerns, then maybe you need to do more research. A lot of people, they'll see these posts on Facebook where it's like give $50,000, $70,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the case. If that happens, you're either like completely losing your uterus or like something crazy happened. So in these contracts, there is like if certain things happen, you do get like payouts. So I can see where that can happen, but you probably went through something really bad.
Yeah.
So the reason why you do need to talk to your partner about it is there is also what's known as secondhand infertility. So like me and Matthew, we did have the talk of like, well, do you want to have kids? Because if I do this, like even if you only do it once, you're pumping yourself with hormones and like all these crazy things, right? So there is a chance that if you want to get pregnant later down the road, you won't be able to.
Okay.
At the same time, there's also rare cases where your body reacts differently. So next time you try to get pregnant naturally, there was a girl who actually ended up with triplets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there are some things that you kind of have to take into consideration when you are looking to, okay, do I really want to do this? His biggest setback, where like we kind of had to talk about it a lot, was it really wasn't anything other than the fact is, are you going to be okay after? Because
like
it's
everyone's main
yeah,
concern,
it's like
right?
emotionally, like, are you sure you're going to be okay after? Especially after he found out it was going to be traditional surrogacy. Um, and the crazy thing is, like, the whole process was easy for me. It was actually harder on my mom.
Okay. I could see that.
Because technically they're her grandchildren, right? But the cool thing is we're all still in touch. Like, she sent us Christmas pictures. Like, she's texting
Yeah,
my
I see
mom.
that.
Like,
She gets like you get texts, you get photos all the time.
yeah.
Like, you know their needs.
And then my mom is actually when they came down for the labor and delivery and all that stuff. My mom and her mom actually like swapped emails and stuff because her mom's like a little bit older, so she does more of emailing than text message and all that. So they actually stay in touch, which I guess is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's like the modern family, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what the modern family is just grabbing people and just adding them
Yeah.
to your circle, and that's really what it is. Like the whole taking a village to raise a child. Like
Yeah.
this is literally like a giant national village.
And that's because
From
like the
across
thing
country.
with this is like, or why they wanted to do traditional surrogacy is before they were looking into adoption agency, but they were going with an open adoption agency, and that adoption agency actually got bankrupt, and that's why they started kind of like, okay, well, what are we gonna do next? But in their family, adoption ran really deep, in two ways. So they did want to adopt at first, not go through surrogacy, but it's because his dad was actually adopted, and his dad's dad was actually adopted. But the second part of that is they also wanted it to be an open adoption because for dad's dad, so grandpa, I guess, he never really, or he felt like he was missing a part of himself because he never knew where he came from because it was a closed adoption. So when you're going through this process and you're doing the application and things like that, the agency is going to give you, like, if you go through an agency, we ended up not going through an agency. But if you do go through an agency, or if you decide not to, these are some questions that you should think about. So the agency is going to ask you really in-depth questions like, during the pregnancy, how often do you want to be in touch? Do you prefer like email, text message, Skype? Like, how do you guys want to communicate? What are some other good ones?
And then they go really into like your health too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, so they like complete physicals, your mental health, like
Yep.
all of that.
So when we talked about that whole married thing, like, you're married by law. So if you wanted to do it, you would actually get a psych eval. Husband would get a psych eval. You both, well, only you would get the medical clearance, but they do also do like a social work visit, like to
Okay.
see where you
At
live,
home.
make sure you're like in a good space. You can't be on any type of financial what is
Assistance.
it? Assistance, yeah. So like food stamps, housing, WIC, like any of that, it
Okay.
automatically disqualifies you. BMI needs to be under 31%.
Okay.
And then that one life pregnancy, like
What
carried
about
to term.
like age? Does age matter?
So age does. It's gonna be 21.
Okay.
So 21 is starting age, and then ending, it's also going to vary by clinic. So the thing is that every clinic has a certain amount of yeses and nos. 3 C-sections is a cutoff for most, but there are some that will let you do 4 or 5, just depending on how your scarring is. And then age is going to be about 40, 41, unless if it's a family or friend and they're in really good health and they're like, their doctors are saying no, like they're good. Then they're good. And a lot of people don't realize or ask like, well, why is there so many things that you need to go through? And I don't know if you saw when I was answering some questions on Instagram, but like the worst question that you can possibly ask is, well, how much money did you make? Because if you're going into it for the money, that's automatically the wrong reason, and don't do it.
Yeah.
These parents end up spending anywhere from 130 to 180,000.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money, and that's why it's so, they go through all these steps to make sure that you're really good to do it, because if you're not, or if something were to happen, like, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a huge loss, and it's like something obviously they've been putting time and effort and energy and love mostly into like you're really like the golden egg, like you are the golden chicken with their little egg at the moment. How do you think you'll be doing it again?
So I actually did start an application in December. Right now they're just like going over the medical records. So they did find a couple that they want me to work with in, I think it was Michigan. This time it is a gay couple. But where they have their embryos at, they're, I guess, like really strict with certain things. So they're kind of like looking into that. When me and Matthew had first talked, I told him I wanted to do 3. But if the thing is my 2 babies were C-section, the twins were C-section. So this could be possibly my last one. If it ends up being a C-section again. So right now I am looking for someone who's kind of more open to VBAC, but only because if it does go through, the 3rd time I do it, I do want to do it altruistically. So it's just like crossing your fingers and seeing like what happens.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Good luck. That's amazing. So, obviously everybody's like, so how much money did you get? How much money? What's the feelings that you got? Like, what? I mean, because we all know what it. Well, we don't all know, but as moms, we all know what it's like when the baby's born, and that feeling of becoming a mom, and that. What feelings did you feel? Like, were they different from your other children? Like, what emotions did you go through? Like.
So it's weird, and it's probably gonna, you know how they say like psychopaths don't have emotion? The thing is that from the get-go, you're going into this saying these are not my babies.
Okay.
Even though, yes, they were my eggs, I still have that same mentality. these are not my babies.
Yeah.
So we still got a chance to see the babies afterwards. Mom and dad, they still want to have a really close connection. Like, they are going to refer to me as the aunt, but babies are still going to know technically, like, I'm bio mom, you know?
Okay.
But no, like, it's weird.
Yeah. It wasn't the same at all.
No.
It wasn't the same at all.
Mm-mm.
Okay. What about knowing you did that for somebody? Like, is that what's making you want to do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So throughout the whole thing, like when we were doing like our video calls, like our emails, like all that stuff. So when I was first going into it, I was going as just gestational, a gestational surrogate. But when I met Kaz and we started emailing, first she had messaged me on Facebook. And she sent like this silly little brochure over that they had her do when they were working with the adoption agency. Um, and she just came off so dorky right away. And then she's like, "Oh, sorry, like, if you are interested in talking to me, like, send me an email." So then we went to email, and then we started like Skype calling and stuff like that. And then when you just meet someone and you like click, like you're like, okay, like I like this person, I can trust this person. We both felt like that instant connection, and then that's when I was like, okay, like, I can give up my eggs for this person. Like, I feel like I have a good energy reader, aura reader. And I could just tell, like, pure soul. And we kind of just went from there.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like it's such a selfless thing. I always tell people, because of course it comes up in constant conversations, especially like you were saying how it's so trendy now because Kim K did it, Gabriella Union did it. So it's a new thing. It's common. It's another way we can help women. Yeah. It's another way we can
not just women. I mean, the gay community too.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So
I'm so sorry.
No. But it's because that's like a huge part in it. There's actually a group, and I forgot the names of it. Is it Dads Helping Dads or something like that? But they're really big on surrogacy, and they actually do, like, I want to say that it's like 2. They try to do 2 every year. But how do I put this? So I remember I told you we were traditional. In the beginning, we were actually doing home insemination. So basically, when I was ovulating, like, Caleb would fly down during that time, and he'd like leave a fresh donation for me in the morning, and I was like doing it myself. So what people I don't think realize is that I had actually been working with this couple since 2017. So it took us like 2 years. So that's another question that a lot of people ask is like, how long does it take? Well, the thing is how committed are you to it? For, I want to say, like, at least 1 session, and that's just to say that it goes perfectly, you're looking at a year minimum.
Okay.
A year minimum. Normally they take about 3 months to match. So aside from those questions of like how often do you want to talk and things like that, some of the other things that you're going to have to really like look inside of yourself that I think are touchy subjects and a lot of people don't want to talk about is the whole like no abortion, it's her right, it's this, it's that. So there are going to be questions on there. If you're pregnant with multiples, like, are you willing to do a selective reduction? If they do testing and they find out the baby has some sort of chromosomal disease, or I know like there was a surrogate that was working with a Chinese couple, and the baby was showing like cleft lip.
Oh, okay.
And I guess in Chinese culture that's considered like a bad omen or something like that. So on Facebook, there's groups where you're trying to meet people, and there's actually groups that they call transfer groups. So what they'll do is they'll break it down into months, so that way if you're transferring within a certain period, like you have some girls that you can kind of talk to and be like, share the exciting news, you know? Okay. Yeah. So she was like really freaking out because she's like, well, they want me to like have an abortion, you know, and we're supposed to meet with these specialists, see if they can do the surgery. And the thing is that they ask you these questions in the beginning, like, are you willing to have an abortion in these situations? And like me, I'm pro-choice. Like, you know what you can handle, you know what you cannot handle. But personally, I don't think I ever could. But now that it's like, okay, well, now you're gonna have a baby for someone else, like, are you willing to actually go through with it? Because they can't force you into a clinic.
Yeah.
or a hospital to do this, And there has been, when I was doing research, there's like the good stories and the bad stories. And there were some where it's like, no, the surrogate refused. So then she ended up with this baby that wasn't even hers,
Mm-hmm.
But it's like they ask you these questions for a reason, like dig down deep and see where your views really
Yeah.
are. So it's pretty crazy.
That's insane. Yeah. Those are things you don't even think about. And when you're having like the conversations, you really have to like.
Yeah. And then,
wow.
I guess like when you were saying like, did you talk to him about all this stuff? Aside from the secondhand infertility, like you also have to think of the what if situations, because these parents, aside from getting you like your lawyer and all this other stuff, they do actually take out a life insurance policy on you. So that's one other thing. Like I do have my 2 babies, and thank God, like all 3 of my deliveries have gone really smooth, but like you're also playing with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've ever been pregnant, like, luckily you had really easy pregnancies, but I mean, I had pretty easy pregnancies, but things still happen to my body.
Yeah.
Like, especially afterwards, I was like, that's never looked like that.
My belly button with the twins got so messed up, and I'm just like, learning to live with it.
Yeah. I mean, the belly button and other things. Yeah. I'm just like, that's
You're
weird
lucky because
now.
you had that. I have a C-section.
Oh, that's
so
true. Okay,
like,
yeah. If you had a C-section. So yeah, it's just to me it's such a selfless thing, and that's why I really wanted to have you on the show, because I think it's something that is so it's not common, but it's so popular right now. It's such a trend, and I think we're not educated on it. I think we see it as like a get rich scam. A lot of people do for some reason, and it's not. It's really not. It's a selfless thing. It's something I feel like it's a gift you're giving. You know what I mean? Like a service you're providing. Like you're changing people's lives. You're giving them the ultimate gift, and that's major.
Yeah.
Kudos to you. Thank you for doing that.
But yeah, it's pretty crazy. Just I think that's the biggest thing though. Like if you really are, obviously the money is a bonus. Like you're really putting a lot on the line, but it's the wrong reason to decide to do it. Yeah.
We've all seen Baby Mama.
Yeah.
Doesn't end well.
No, there's been crazy stories like that. Let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like when I was starting the process. So like 2017, there was a story that was like on Parents USA, Parents, and like all these other news websites, CNN, and all these crazy things. During this process, there are certain time periods, and your husband actually needs to sign off on contracts and things like that. So there's certain time frames where you do actually have to stay abstinent, obviously, for obvious reasons, right? This woman, she was in some of the groups we were in. So a lot of us like knew her name, and then when the story came out, we were like, what the heck? And on Facebook groups, you can kind of search a person's name, and it'll show you everything that they posted. So she was basically making this big deal. She got pregnant for this Chinese couple. One of the things you do talk about is after the birth. Like most contracts do say that you get to see the babies for an hour before the parents take them, things like that. So she said that the babies were only with her for like 15 minutes, and then they kind of like took the babies and left back to China. She got sent a picture a few weeks later. Her husband is dark skinned and she's white, and one of the babies was Chinese, and the other one was this cute little brown baby.
Oh, okay.
So in these groups, she was actually saying
one was hers and one was theirs.
So during the time of her transfer, she was making all these posts, and they weren't making sense with the story that the magazines were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So she was in these groups basically asking, like, when can I return to my wifely duties? Like, just a whole bunch of questions about basically when can I start having sex again? Well, by the time she was posting those, she already had, because the babies were only like 2 days apart, which means like they did something during that time period. She was really mad because the agency was actually trying to charge her in order to get her baby back. So she's like, that's my baby, blah, 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 blah. And it's crazy because everybody on Facebook who doesn't really know about the process, they're like, how could people do this? That's so horrible. And then like all the surrogates were like, dude, no, she was wrong.
Yeah,
she wasn't supposed to do that. Like, this was her fault. I mean, think about it, all the legal fees, like these parents, they pay for your insurance. They're literally paying for everything. And she got, I don't want to say double because people think you get paid double for twins. That's not the case. You do get a little bit extra, but she got extra for something that
it's hers. Yeah. That's insane. So, why are twins so common in surrogacy? Like, is it the process that happens?
So you can choose.
Okay.
We did actually transfer 2 embryos, and both of them stuck. The other chance is that you do transfer 1 and then it splits.
Oh, okay.
So do you remember Octomom?
Mm-hmm.
So with her, I don't really know her story too much, but I know hers was a case of them splitting. So what happens is a lot of time is depending on mom and when the eggs were taken out, they have like an egg quality thing. So sometimes what some clinics will do is they'll put a really good egg and a really bad egg to try to make the good egg stick.
Oh.
I don't know how or why, but it's basically like they want to say like, okay, try to reject this one and try to make this one stick for a better possibility instead of just putting one in there and then it not sticking at all. So like Octomom's, hers was actually a case that they just split.
Oh, wow.
So it's possible.
Oh, okay. Very
It is
interesting.
possible.
That's amazing. Yeah, so there's so many misconceptions, there's so many truths, so many lies, so many things that you really have to think about. Even before you speak on a subject, get educated on it. I know most of you are not going to go out and become surrogates, and it's good to educate yourself on things, especially if they're going to be things that you're going to be talking about, things that are going to be in the media, in the news. It's always good to learn about it and to know that there are real women in your communities and they're taking those steps and they're making those differences. And if it's something that you're interested in, it's completely possible. It's a way that you could change somebody's life. It's a way that you could maybe do something really amazing.
Yeah.
With something that God has given you or the higher power has given you an ability to do. And you could bless someone's life with it. Any last words you have?
Not
you
really.
To share?
So if you are interested or if like you are a couple who's maybe been struggling or you want to start kind of like the process or whatnot, I will say the internet is a little bit confusing, but there are a whole bunch of groups on Facebook. The cool thing about these groups is most of the groups, they are ran by agencies. Even if you don't want to go through an agency, like it's really cool because most of the people in there are either new to surrogacy, so you can always research or look up questions that maybe you have answers that you're looking for. There are a lot of the art lawyers in there.
Okay.
The assistive reproductive lawyers in there. And they'll answer some questions here or there. And then, like I said, there's a lot of agencies in there that will give you, like, you know, just free advice and stuff. Or if you do have questions, like, I answer for a lot of my friends. If they have questions.
You can always reach out to her. We will tag her, put all of her information, social media in the links. So you guys can reach out to her if you have any questions. Do you have, one last thing we always like to do with our guests is just like a little fun thing. If we were on an island and we only had 3 things in your bag and we had to survive off of it, what are we surviving off of?
In my bag.
Yes, you're a mom, so I know you can make us survive.
Chapstick?
Yes.
A mirror?
Ooh.
That can make fire, right? Or is that a magnifying glass?
No, you could probably make fire with it, I think.
A mirror.
Sun and mirror, yeah. You can look at yourself. Look at yourself. Hot flames all over the place.
I don't know what else I have. I have a Sharpie.
So we're going to have eyebrows, and we're going to have moisturized lips, and we're going to be looking good, looking at ourselves, okay? We might be hungry, we might be cold, we might not have a way to communicate, but we'll look good. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening. Thank you guys for taking your time and being with me. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It was such a pleasure. Have a great year, month, day, week, night. I don't know when you're listening to this, boo, but have a great one. Bye, bitch.
Good enough.